most of us are using, we can hear those very slight, deep targets, and modulated audio being on will help to bring them into us. Okay. Next one down is auto track. It's either on or it's off. And when the detector is ground balanced in the beginning, it's going to set itself to the ground levels. But as the slight variations in the ground occur while you're hunting, auto track on will let the machine keep up with those changes and keep your machine perfectly tuned. So there's really no reason that I would know of to have it off.
Well, there are very few reasons to have it off. One is when you're not working on the ground, and if you have your loop up on a table and you're doing sampling, such as examining ore samples, for example, or things, you don't want the thing wandering around. You set your ground, keep it that way, and just don't deal with auto track at all. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of.
Don't you also, Jimmy, when you're prospecting, do you turn auto track off?
No, we leave auto tracking on because we want, the ground is changing rapidly, and we want to be able to keep up with the ground.
Okay.
Okay. Track view is the next one down. That's either on or off. And that's simply a label that says track when auto track is functioning.
That's right.
If we want to see how often the machine auto tracks and when it does that, we would have track view on.
And we do that sometimes in the prospecting because the ground is bad, but there are places where ground is badder than other places. And tracking view tells you exactly where the ground is so you can keep ground balancing, and that's the most important thing that there is in detecting for depth, is to have your ground properly balanced.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll go on to the next one. We push the down button. We've got auto track speed.
Jimmy, go ahead on that one.
Well, in this case, auto track speed depends upon how much mineralization there is. And of course, the worse the mineralization, the faster you want it to track. So I think we've figured out at the factory level what average conditions are. And from then on out, it's sort of up to you. You're going to start somewhere in the middle for tracking. And I don't think you can hurt yourself with this control. It's a real personal thing.
And the next one, pushing the down button, is auto track offset. It's set at 0. You can either go to a minus offset or a positive offset. I can think of one particular adjustment where you'd want to go positive would be if you're looking for small gold items, a slightly positive offset will make the machine more sensitive to smaller objects.
That's exactly right. We ran into that down in Arizona here a while back, trying to find small targets, and happened to be using the White's Goldmaster, and the ground balance was right on the money, and threw down my very tiny gold nugget to prove how small a target it found. I couldn't hear it anymore until I took and pushed it slightly positive to the ground, so you hear a little sound as you go to the ground. Now that's you do that by going +1 or +2 on here, for example, getting that ground so as you lower to the ground with your trigger squeezed, you're in the all metal mode. If the ground sounds a little bit higher than the air sound, you're adding the ground noise to the target noise. That gives you a louder hit. And for a tiny target, you're right. If you don't have that, you may just miss it completely.
And we'd use a negative setting if hot rocks were a particular problem in the area we were in. And then when we lowered the loop to the ground, it would actually go null above the ground, and we would be tending to cut out the ground and the hot rocks that are in it.
Right, you got to be careful there. Coin hunting, you probably wouldn't lose anything at all, but you have to be willing to trade off.
That's right.
If you go to a slightly negative ground, it's a lot quieter, like you say, but you're going to lose the very tiny targets.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we'll go to the next one, push the down button, and we have track inhibit, and it's on in the factory program.
Yeah, on track inhibit, on most of the programs, I think you'll probably find it is on, except the prospecting program. The reason for that would be, in track inhibit stops the detector from tracking when it hits a metal target. So you want to stop that. If you were going over an area and there were lots of solid nails or bottle caps and coins, every time it hit one of those things, it stops it from tracking, so that you want the metal target to come up. You want your coin to come up. Prospecting, you have mostly rusted iron stuff, real lot of rust, and you don't want that inhibitor on there. You want it to track all the time. So to take the tracking inhibitor off, you go to the off position, then it's always tracking, and you're keeping that ground under control.
These pro adjustments are really giving the user the opportunity to do what engineers have done in the past. whatever is available, we can turn on, turn off, massage a little bit, and make the machine really customized for the area we're in.
There's no other machine that can do that. You'd have about 15 different metal detectors that you'd have to carry around with you just to make the programs different.
Right.
We're able to make one machine do all of that. Yeah.
We'll go to the next one, push the down button. We got coarse GEB. We have our manual ground balance adjustment.
Manual ground balance would be when you want to override the automatic ground balance for a particular reason. And let's say you were at the beach, for example, and you were wanting to hunt perpendicular to the water. You're going to go from the wet sand to the damp sand to the dry sand, and there's great changes in mineralization there. You might want to set your coarse GEB at a specific level that you know works, and then hunt it a little more parallel to the water line, and it would hold that course, and you would do your up and down figure 8 kind of thing to locate your targets, but you would be sure that your ground balance is going to stay pretty much on the money.
Rather than have it tracking and going bizarre as you go toward the wet, it drops the track off. With coarse, you're going to stay that way. You're locking in other words, your ground.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the next one should be, what, fine, because you've got 2 ground balance controls, coarse and fine. Yeah. That takes some practice.
And coarse, in fact, is a pretty major change. When we make a change of numbers, we don't want to go from 20 to 40. We want to go from maybe 20 to 22.
Yeah, and then
or something
hone
like
it in
that.
with the fine.
Right.
Yeah, right, that's good.
And we go down once again, and we have Disk Edit. This is where you actually go in and customize your discriminator. You either put targets to come in, or you can take targets out. You can just physically go in and change the discriminator to either accept or reject any particular VDI number. A case where you might want to do something like this is not too long ago I was hunting around an old church, and the church had brass roofing nails. And you know, they were just everywhere. It was just saturated with them. After I dug a couple of them and I found out where they were reading at on the meter, I went in and took out, they were coming in at about 60. And so I went in there with the disk editor, rejected 59, 60, and 61. You want to go a number on each side of the particular target where it actually reads at. And I was able to reject those roofing nails, and I found several good coins without having to put up with all those different roofing nail targets.
Yeah, we might mention here that we don't want to make it look like this is so exacting that if you take out, like you said, a number on either side, the way that target is in the ground, the angle, the depth, has something to do with that number.
Right.
And so you might get a random nail here and there, but you're going to knock out most of them.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The accept and rejecting of numbers, there's 95 numbers to the left, negative, and 95 numbers to the right, positive, or 94, I guess, because counting 0. And so what you have is the ability to go down to that lower iron range, below 0, and add in accepted numbers.
Right.
And some of our programs do that. Oh, Kat just came up here to play with us here. Kitty, we're doing a video here. The ability to put in some negative numbers enhances some targets and gets you more depth. And this gives you a real control over your discrimination. This is called what? Digital discrimination.
Digital discrimination.
Instead of the old analog type, we've got total control of those numbers.
Books have been written on discrimination, how you would use more, use less, the relationship of targets one to the other. And that relationship's going to be the same no matter what machine we're using. So we can go in with this and put in notches to take separate items out, put separate items in, and depending, like Randy did at the churchyard with the brass nails, we can customize it for the exact area we're hunting, for what we're looking for.
Yeah, one thing we might mention, I don't know if this is the spot to do it, but I just flashed on it that one of those numbers, accept or reject, happens to be 95. And that's a number that was put in specifically to be an anomaly or a hot rock. And if you're in an area such as a beach and you happen to be picking up hot rocks and they're bothersome, you can go to 95 on your discriminate editor. If it happens to be in there, take it out. But you are, again, sacrificing some depth in mineralized ground if you do. So my advice is always to go with the factory program and then know what you're doing when you get involved there. And you can ask your dealer that information. If you're confused, you look in your manual, you still don't understand some of the little things, ask your dealer about it. And your dealer doesn't know, tell him to call his 800 number and he's going to find out. Sure. Because the answers are somewhere. This detector can handle most problems.
One of the nice things about this detector is these VDI numbers, the scale that we're talking about, it's printed right here on the top of the box. So if you need to know where a particular item generally falls on that VDI scale, it's usually printed right here on that scale.
Yeah, in general terms, it's there. The next part of the discriminate edit